there's a lot of work that goes into it, and it's not like they depict in commercials for game design programs and stuff where
you're holding a controller.
I'm a game designer. You're just there, the controller, just like writhing around on the couch, like slamming buttons, and somebody pops in. They're like, "Hey, I need some tips on blah." And you're like, "Do this." And you're like, "All right."
Butterscotch
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 71 of Coffee with Butterscotch, the game dev comedy podcast, Butterscotch Shenanigans.
Oh yeah.
I'm Seth, and I'm the games programmer.
I'm Adam, and I'm the bit bucket bonanzaist.
You
Bazooka. You're a bazooka.
Yes.
I'm Sam, back
Big bazooka.
pictures.
I'm Carol. I do webs.
Yeah.
And today's November 1st, 2016. Happy Novemberween, everybody. It's very spooky outside.
Yeah. Well, it was spooky, but now it's fine.
Yeah. It's been a very
still
stressful
spooky.
week.
It's still spooky.
Oh wait, sorry. Before we say anything else, this show is not for chids or children. So there's going to be profanity and lewdness. So get out of here. All right. So Halloween just happened.
It's so spooky.
It was terrifying.
So spooky.
It's probably the most stressful month of the year for everybody.
Well, especially when everybody's Twitter names are all scary.
Everybody just, you can't even log on Twitter because it's just so spooky.
So spooky.
My heart's been palpitating for weeks. I'm sweaty.
It's all
I
over.
haven't slept.
Behind
Everywhere
us
I
now.
go, there's skeletons and zombies and
I
pumpkins.
think that's your cholesterol.
Yeah, probably. So yeah, I'm glad it's over.
Well, we talked about a lot of video game studios have their own holidays, right? Where of course they line up on the actual holidays, but they change the name of it. And I think we were talking about trying to figure out what our Halloween name would be in the Butterscotch universe. And I think all of us really like the word spooky because to me it actually plays on the fact that all the stuff during
nothing is
Halloween is not scary. Like
Nothing is scary.
these cardboard gravestones or these little skeletons that are just like flopping like the other day on the door. It's not actually scary, but it's trying
It's
to
spooky.
be. So it's just spooky.
Spooky is something that is, pretends to be scary, but is actually kind of lighthearted and fun, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah. So we're trying to, I
Creepy.
Creepy.
wonder what name. Spookoween?
Spookoween.
Yeah, I don't know. Spookfest. We'll have to do some.
We'll do it. Because
Brainstorming.
Whoa Nope needs some holidays.
It does.
It does indeed.
So it's going to happen.
You guys
Uh,
I know.
Spoo. Also, we have some cool news, which is Crashlands is one of the top 50 apps of the year, according to Time Magazine.
I love finding this
So-
stuff out just randomly on Twitter. Somebody will tweet at us and be like, "Hey, did you know you're in this?" And we're like,
Yes, no, weird.
"What?"
Time Magazine didn't send us an email and be like, by the way, we put your app."
Yeah.
They just
I
like,
think it's
we
kind
just
of a-
did it.
It's kind of a prestigious thing. And
Yeah.
we didn't even know it happened.
I don't know.
I feel like it is.
But I mean,
It's Time Magazine.
But Forbes also used to be Forbes, and now any random person can just post on Forbes.
That's true.
So has time
We
become
don't-
that, or
I
is
don't
time
know.
still legit?
We'll pretend it's legit.
I think yeah.
Because
Go with that.
that's,
That's fine.
better for us then.
They
Yeah.
tweeted about it. It's on their Twitter.
Yeah.
Their
Tweeted.
I
official
bet
Twitter.
that led to 0 sales.
Yeah.
That's
Potentially.
I would
Hey,
agree with that.
we had interviews yesterday.
Yeah.
We did. We
Is-
finished up
Wait,
the.
Sunday.
2 days ago.
What? Oh,
So
Like, what?
interviews with who? Oh, with the yeah.
you were there too.
You were there, Adam.
I was there.
You
So
existed in this
there's
space with us.
there's a documentary being made about Crashlands. It's called Brace for Impact. The Crashlands
Impact.
story.
Packed.
It's being made by a film group here in St. Louis called Forever an Astronaut. And they've been working on it they started filming and doing interviews with us over a year ago.
So it was September before the launch, I think.
Yeah.
Or October, one of the two.
So it was a while before we even were in beta, and so it was kind of cool because we got to talk about what our plans were and what we anticipated happening, and the story of Sam going through all his bullshit while we were working on the game. He had cancer.
I think they even have a video of him getting a bone marrow biopsy.
They do actually.
Yeah.
Which I don't know. Yeah, who knows to put that
And
in?
they
So-
and they were
I wanna
there.
see it.
They were there in the room when we got the all clear.
Yeah.
The final "you don't have cancer"
Mhm.
moment. So that was caught on film, and that's going to be in the documentary as well.
I wish
So,
we could have
yeah.
captured the cameraman Dylan's face when we were sitting there, and he looked at me and he was like, what if
it's bad
what
news?
if it's bad news? And I just look at him and I go, either way, it's going to be good television. And he like looked mildly horrified, but also amused. I was like,
He was like, yeah, I guess.
I guess so.
Yeah, so we got some good material. So guys, don't fuck up your video.
Yeah, so they were here. They came. They hadn't been to our new studio location, and so they came on Sunday to do some interviews and basically follow up on what has happened in the studio since Crashlands came out.
sort of like the epilogue, I guess, of the whole thing.
Yeah, like
right?
10 months later, where
Yeah.
are we? What was the aftermath? So that's pretty cool to kind of look back on.
And they
everything.
got picked up by Devolver Digital actually for publishing. So they'll be doing some distribution stuff through them through Steam. And they actually are headlining MagFest, I think. So there's going to be a feature length cut of the whole thing, which normally is a 6-episode series of 20 minutes each. They're doing an actual sort of movie cut for MagFest in January.
And you're gonna be there.
I'll be there. They'll be there. We'll be doing a panel there. It's in
It's
like
in
near Washington.
National Harbor, Maryland.
Boston
East
Coast.
Apparently, you could drive a boat.
Yeah,
to
you can
it.
take a boat. They're like, arrive by
Wait,
plane.
do you
by
have to buy the
bus,
boat, or
by
can you just hop into
motherfucking
any boat, or how does this boat thing
You
work?
could probably just swim there. You didn't even need a boat.
Yeah, just
It's just it's on a river, so you could just
Speak for yourself, because Adam and I tried to swim last week, and it was bad.
we did swim though.
We swam. We made it 500 yards.
I think you made it 500 yards. I made it 400.
Wait, how long did it take you to go 500 yards?
It's 15 minutes.
Wow.
Which, I mean, in retrospect, isn't terrible, but I don't think I could have done any more. So I think after 15 minutes, I was cooked. My goose was cooked. Because we used to swim 3,000 yards in an hour.
Yep.
So it's, it's 2/3 of the pace, right? But no. After 15 minutes, I was done. Got to get back in that. But we are doing a 5K,
Mm-hmm.
which is
November
also
12th.
going to be horrible.
Yeah, we're gonna do.
Yeah, I'm
Is
not
that
doing
next
it.
weekend?
Carol's like,
when is that?
Be in 2 weekends.
2
So you
weekends.
got 2 weekends to buff up your legs a little bit.
Is that Pokemon weekend?
No, it's the weekend before Pokemon weekend.
Okay.
Yeah,
Did
because
you
we would
put
have to.
Pokemon
We'd probably have to
weekend?
cancel the 5K.
Yeah,
we
I
would
would.
actually tell them to cancel the 5K.
Oh, but and Pokemon weekend is when Pokemon Sun and Moon come out. We're just
November
gonna spend the
18th.
weekend playing Pokemon.
yeah, I need to actually add that to my calendar. I'm gonna write that down.
Write that down.
We got it pre-ordered, so it's just going to
don't-
show up
you,
on our
You
doorstep.
can't just add it to your calendar. You also have to delete everything else from your calendar.
That's a really good
It's a
point.
2-step process.
So make sure you, but yeah, this race is, well, it's not a race. It's just a 5K. It's,
I mean, technically it is a race, but
It just doesn't
But-
matter if you win.
but
or
who really
lose.
wins is it's a charity. So
Which charity is it?
it's Race for Home is the name of the thing. It's for it's a homelessness awareness and race.
yeah. So if you're in the St. Louis area, nearby, and you want to help some charity and run around and high five some butterscotches,
Yeah.
come to this
We might be
Race
the-
for Home 5K.
We might be in the back of the pack though, so
I will be, definitely.
It depends how out of shape everybody else is who's participating.
Turns out Seth's legs fall asleep after about a mile.
I'm just gonna bring a raw steak and just chew on it as I go, just to keep my
Gather energy.
my
The protein
energy and protein up.
High. You could just you could wear cargo shorts and just fill
Pack
your
full of
pockets with jerky.
jerky.
Mm.
Yeah,
Not raw meat though. So you think that's a better solution than
raw meat.
The
I thought you
raw
said
meat?
rob meat.
Rob meat.
Rob meat.
No, just rob just rob the meat store on the way over.
Kill Rob, turn him into some jerky.
Poor
feel
Rob.
like-
Rob meat.
Yeah, poor Rob.
I'm not here to be fuel for your body.
God, that's a nightmare.
All right, Carol, tell us about your PSVR experience. This is
Yeah.
important. Everybody's
Everybody
into VR.
listen.
So everybody's now I'm all self-conscious. No, everybody's really into VR right now. We go to these events and these conventions and half of the demos are VR games. And so it's like, okay, this is a big deal. We should be aware of this. I'm like, I'm going to get a PSVR. It's going to be great. I'm going to know what people are excited about. I'm going to play these games that my friends are making that are rad and VR. So I'm like, okay, gonna go. They're rad and VR. You're going to
Rad and VR.
They're both.
Are
of those
they
things.
since to get through the gauntlet of PlayStation though?
Yeah.
Can you even play most of them because it had to get onto the console first for PSVR?
Yeah, you do have to be on a PlayStation.
Yeah.
There are a
You
lot
have
of
to be PlayStation published.
VR games on Steam though. There's hundreds of them.
Can
Yeah,
you use the
for the
PSVR on?
Mm-mm,
Yeah.
No, it's just for the PlayStation. So I decided to just go ahead and pick it up because I have the PlayStation. I like playing the PS4 games. And so I was like, all right, I'll just go get one in person. I want it now. I got the giant set of it. And I was like, this is $550 worth of VR shit that I'm holding.
But hey, everybody's into it, so it must be good.
Right?
Huh?
It's got to be worth it.
Actually, I remember seeing a talk recently where the person just got up on stage and just started foaming at the mouth and screaming VR for 45 minutes. So I think it's really good.
I thought that was every talk we went.
Yeah.
That's what I did as soon as I was standing in line at Micro Center just screaming
Yeah, but it's hard to hear because everybody else is doing the same thing.
Yeah,
so,
exactly. So I take this box that's like the size of me home, set it up. There's a million cords and cables and everything. I'm like, okay, this has to be worth it. It's got to be amazing.
Plug it into the Matrix, basically, at this point.
So I put it on and I'm like, wow, everything's so pixely. It's just so incredibly low res. It felt really awkward. It wasn't, I mean, like the games were really cool, but then I take it off and I'm like, wow, I feel kind of weird. I feel kind of not
Wait,
great.
how long were you in the Matrix?
So I was in the Matrix maybe between a half hour and an hour the first time.
Okay.
So that's a pretty substantial amount of time, I guess, for VR stuff. And so I was like also popping around between a couple of different games. I played Thumper, I played Super Hypercube. I watched some of the free movies that they're super gimmicky, but they're like, look at how cool VR is.
It reminds me of when 3D movies first appeared, and they would always like,
pointing the sword at the camera.
stuff at the screen, or like debris would always have to fly at your face.
That's absolutely how it felt. It was super, super weird. But after watching all of that stuff, I wound up feeling really garbage, like really, really sick. And so I went to bed. Like
the normal world was just so pale in comparison to the VR world.
Yeah, the VR, like it also just kind of kept like twitching around. Anytime I was supposed to be standing still, everything else would just kind of move a couple of pixels because it's so pixelated. It was really obvious when that happened.
Yeah. I guess the screen is like right next to your eyes.
Yeah, it's like an inch away.
The fidelity that they need as far as pixels is
it's gonna be really dense.
Yeah, so I woke up that night with a searing, raging migraine and I basically didn't play for 2 days and was like, okay, I'm better now. I'm going to give it another try. Played for a half hour, actually 15 minutes. I timed it and was sick again. And I was like, well, maybe I'll just keep,
Well, so you know what this is, though. You know, a lot of people think this is motion sickness and stuff. So what this really is, and there's been some studies about this, is we live in the Matrix actually, and VR is us looking out into what the real world is. And you know that scene when they unplug Neo and he just starts throwing up everywhere? I mean, that's basically
his entire
what's
body's
happening.
Atrophied.
So you're just experiencing what it's like to actually be alive for the first time.
Be Neo.
Well, I'm taking the blue pill because I returned the PSVR after.
I can't remember which pill was which.
That's the correct pill.
The red pill is what puts you, pulls you out of the Matrix. The blue pill keeps you in.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Oh, this is very. Ooh.
This is an oldie. It's
but it also took like
1999.
2 levels because since we're already in the Matrix, you had to take.
You had to stay in.
even though what you were trying to do was get out.
I'm just like Cypher.
That was good.
You
I
can't
liked it.
trust
Yeah,
me.
that's why they talk about VR as being like very escapist, because you're escaping from the Matrix.
Yeah, wow. But yeah, so I returned it because I after a week of feeling totally sick, I was just like, there's no way I'm gonna keep playing this thing.
Right.
It's a pain machine at this point.
And at Steam Dev Days, there was a lot of talk about VR, and they were talking about how the belief is that in order for it to be viable for people to not get sick, they need to have at least 8K resolution per eye and 90 frames per second constantly.
Yeah.
So it can never dip below 90 frames per second because that's when you see the stuttering and the jittering and stuff.
Right.
And then beyond that, the game design itself has to make sure it's not yanking you around in physical space and that.
Do
kind
we
of
have?
yeah.
I mean, it's not commonplace to have hardware available that can run.
that
There is
4K
that. Yeah, the hardware doesn't exist.
4K textures where we're at right now.
Yeah.
That's like not even
A little bit.
10%
but
of
it's
the
but it's
population.
still low enough that people, that it's jarring for people, because like Carol was saying, when things move and you can see things move from one pixel to the other,
Right.
That's wrong, right?
Yeah.
That's not how things go, and it makes your brain just
Yeah, and the head tracking has to be absolutely perfect. Like, I mean, everything has to be absolutely perfect. And we're getting like the Vive stuff with their room scale stuff is getting
one-to-one,
really damn close to that. They have it has like sub-millimeter resolution of position in space, like really cool
0.3 millimeters.
But they were
can
saying is like
track stuff.
But the crazy thing is they said that it had to be that precise, otherwise people got sick.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
And so to me, I would just figure people are moving really fast on this now, and I think in a few
We'll just
years,
let it settle.
Yeah, we'll let it settle. In
Yeah.
a few years, we're gonna have really awesome tech that, and I think, and also so Carol was getting really sick with this stuff, and I think probably a lot of people would also get sick with it, but there's a whole spectrum of just how comfortable people are. And as the tech gets better, then more and more people will actually get to do it without experiencing it. It's kind of like, you know, some people get car sick and some people
Well, and like you guys were saying about how developers have to be careful to do things like not make the character like add head bob to the character moving around or or even things even things like pointing the camera at something you want the player to look at. You can't do that actually.
Right.
In VR
You
because-
can't use the stick to turn.
Or dealing with camera shake.
Yeah, you can't camera shake. You can't use camera angles.
Face that you'd be shaking at that point.
Yeah. And it's weird because most players don't think about the camera in games unless it's really badly executed, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But the camera is one of the most important things you have control over as a game developer because it allows you to pull attention to things. And so actually in
And it
Crash
can
Lands,
set the mood even depending on how it behaves.
and in Crash Lands, we do subtle things like when you're fighting a boss. So normally the camera follows your character. When you're fighting a boss, we move the camera to a 50% point that is halfway between you and the boss so that the attention for you is sort of like on the battlefield between you and this thing that you're fighting. Whereas the camera doesn't do that in any other context. So as game designers, we can do camera tricks to kind of like make things feel differently or, you know, whatever. But in VR, you just can't.
Yeah, that was
Or else
even
people throw up everywhere.
that was also apparent even thinking about the films, the VR films. Like one of the really important parts of designing a film and shooting a film is making sure the camera
What's
is
on
facing
screen.
where yeah, and the only thing that they could do to tell you to look in a certain direction was use the audio. And so they'll shoot something in your left ear so you're supposed to turn left to look at what's making the sound, but it's
Right.
just you can't make a really poignant film in VR
Right.
yet, I think.
Yeah,
That's
gonna take
an
a lot of
entirely new
practice.
craft. Yeah, so it's going to take, in the same way that it takes people even decades to gain mastery over something. When you invent a new thing, now you have to lag behind that. So it's going to be a long time before we.
Yeah, it's
really see that.
definitely some time out. It's been really interesting to hear because I've been tweeting about the illness and everything and just kind of asking for advice. Everybody's like, you should try this, you should try this, you should try this, and I'm just like, the risk is way too high.
Right.
Like
At
these
this
games
point.
are okay right now.
Yeah, like let's just give it some time. Let's let people experiment with it, but don't try to evangelize that everybody needs to be playing VR right now because clearly it's not ready.
It's not ready. It's half cooked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, I think we should get to some questions.
Wait.
We have another?
There's one more thing, which is the Scatter Jam this weekend.
Oh,
Oh
yeah.
man.
You maniacs!
Ah.
Forget about
All
the
right,
most
so-
important thing in our lives.
Oh my God. So the
It's the
scatter.
only
No one
thing.
mentioned it when I was making the news bullets this morning.
All right, so
I forgot
the
at that time,
Scatter
too.
Jam is a game jam that's here in St. Louis. A game jam is a 48-hour event where you show up and then a theme is announced. And you have 48 hours to make a game that incorporates that theme. And then at the end of the jam, everybody gets together and shows off their games that they made on stage with raucous applause and laughter.
Also, Fat Bard is there. So the Friday night presentation
Oh, is he
night,
jamming again?
Fat Bard shows up and just riffs on an electric guitar, just
Playing
a bunch
video
of
So
game
good.
video game
music.
music.
It's like Zelda,
Does
Pokemon
the,
stuff.
both of them
just-
come or
It's usually both
It's
of them.
usually,
Yeah.
it's
both
usually,
of
it's either been both
the whole
or
duo?
Patrick, depending on.
Yeah,
what they got
so
going.
so we'll be doing the Scatter Jam. It's here in St. Louis. It's at
It's at the St. Louis Zoo.
Zoo.
Yeah.
Yep, St. Louis Zoo, and it's free to participate.
You're expected to have a team going into it.
Yes,
There's
yeah.
only
You show up
stipulation.
with a friend or 5 friends. If you haven't jammed before, then our recommendation is to try to keep your team pretty small because the bigger your team is, the more the weekend is spent just trying to like delegate tasks and manage communication and stuff. So if you have just 2 or 3 people on a team, that's a really good way to do it. And we're actually going to do something really bizarre this time, I think.
it's gonna be awesome.
Which is we're going to split into multiple teams, and Sam is going to be making art for several teams at
3 teams.
once.
3 teams.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we may even do a thing where Sam's going to make the same art for multiple games, and then we all have to try to make a game out of the art.
We've talked about
Each
doing
making a different
we've talked about doing a deal with it jam in the past.
where Sam just starts
Right,
making
just make a bunch of
stuff.
shit and then put it in the Dropbox, and then everybody just has to deal with it.
That sounds
You mean
great.
put it in the ink pump?
But in the ink book. But the thing is, it's not actually too different from what normally happens anyway. So
Yeah. so it's
Deal with it.
deal with it. We got a few new tools and stuff. Thanks to Adam and Andy's hacking with either AutoHotkey for my Inkscape stuff or with this ink tube thing. So it's, to me, like, I'm really excited about the weekend because it's actually going to be sort of 48 hours of training on the new tools and seeing if I can use that to actually push more content out in a short period of time.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the Shenanimator might not be ready unless I pull some really heavy
If you don't
all-nighters
sleep,
or something.
yeah, then that's
That may not be a
possible.
good idea though.
It's
going
not
up
wise.
to a game jam.
But you know,
the only way it could
I can
happen.
just sleep all day on Friday, and then actually I could sleep in the zoo Friday night and just wake
Yeah.
up at the jam, and I'm ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That sounds good.
So-
And Carol and Sure are going to be working together.
Yeah, it's going to be the first time I've really had a chance to spend time working with Sure, because I've
Mhm.
gotten to work with Andy both in the studio and at XPO.
Mhm.
We both manned the booth together, but I haven't really had any chance.
And
to
technically, Sure, at about 14 feet away from you, is the furthest person in the office.
He is.
from Sure.
He is absolutely the farthest away from me. So I'm super excited. It's going to be a really fun opportunity to get to know him.
Yeah, and Sure is he's in a cool spot in his training where he's starting to get some good feel for mastery of Game Maker and stuff. But since most of what he's been doing is working on existing projects, he hasn't had much time to really like build a whole bunch of stuff from scratch. So this will be kind of a fun way for him to really like think of these new systems and develop stuff inside Game Maker from the ground up, which is a pretty fun thing to do.
Oh, and I wanted to give a shout out to Racing for the Finish, one of our Butterscotches, or Austin Smith, as he's called. He's been running the Huntsville.
Which one of
Games
those
community.
is his Butterscotch ID and which one is his
Nobody
real?
knows.
He's very wishy-washy.
But I think they had a really, really successful sort of first big meeting a few days ago, and they sent us a picture of it. It's After Hours Game Dev is their sort of thing. They decided to do a similar thing to us, which is not use the actual IGDA, but rather just make their own sort of homebrew organization.
Because then it turns out you can just do what you want.
Yep.
It's really nice, turns out.
Yeah, it looks like they're kicking it. So I just wanted to say congrats to the Huntsville Games community.
Woo!
Nice work.
Keep it up.
Woo!
Keep it on. All right, let's get to some questions.
All right, so the first question comes from Zuby311.
Zuby.
Zoo, zoo.
Sorry, Sam, continue.
Hit it, Sam.
Maniacs.
Hit us with the zoobs.
He or she says, Sam, being a huge fan of your previous Inkscape tutorials and art all around, will you be doing any more in the near future, like with the Quadrupus revamp?
Yes, Sam. What's going on?
So I have 3 of them in the wings.
How many?
3.
Okay.
Whose wings?
Which is actually, they're actually the revamp of the Quadrupus for the Quadrupus revamp.
Oh my
And,
God.
Oh my gosh.
Revamp of the quadrupus for the quadrupus.
The thing I was
revamp.
laughing at, so
Quadrupie all the way down.
I always speed them up, right? It's about 1.5, 2x.
It's now they're only like 30 seconds long.
No, they're well. These ones were hard. They were harder to do. So they're 10 minutes long each. But I realized because one of them's doing 2 of them are doing the sort of facing away
butt?
direction.
The quadrupus butt?
There's a lot of quadrupus ass.
You should just clip it down to just that and just call
the
it Inkscape butt
ass
tutorial.
So I started working on them. I recorded the audio for the first one. I just haven't gone through and put it back in because I was like, it's supposed to be a 3-part thing, and then I was like, I don't know if I actually want to.
No, totally do it. That is so on brand.
20 minutes of it is just
butt.
ass, like you know.
But what you need to do, since you're going to overlay commentary, you got to be very, sort of Morgan Freeman-ish.
Well, I was thinking about building
about
up
this
this
butt.
sort of Bob Rossian, Inkscape guy vibe.
Yeah, oh, there you
So
go.
good.
Because we talked about starting the Inkscape tutorials and then Seth's sort of Game Maker tutorials and any other teaching stuff that anybody in the studio wants to do. We're going to start rolling into this idea of the Butterscotch Academy, where have a playlist on YouTube basically that just has a bunch of the stuff that we've put together where people can come to learn about making games. So we have been chatting actually about that general effort, and I think the Inkscape tutorials are one of those things. But I think starting with just a bunch of
Butts,
butts is not.
probably the best way to go.
That is absolutely the best way to go.
All right, I'll just
Even
get
our
it done.
company starts with butt.
I mean, we get
That's true.
and we get
I'll get this done
emails
today.
every day, just constant stream of emails of people being like, I've been
How do I
trying
make
to learn
this butt?
I've been trying to learn Inkscape, but there's not a single butt tutorial on YouTube. I can make anything in Inkscape except for butts. Where
Help
can I
me.
find help? Please help me, Butterscotch.
Yeah, so Seth actually put together a Game Maker tutorial for
Did it start with
jamming
butts?
purposes.
Yeah.
It's just
it's,
Seth's
it's
ass.
called Butt Quest. It's mostly. I mean, it's a beginner thing, so it's mostly like butt physics, butt gravity, just all that kind of stuff. So
That sounds great.
yeah,
But I think that
squats.
we will actually be. I guess the basic point is we put together a bit of a plan for how to handle more of these tutorial things, not just in Inkscape, but in
In
various
general.
avenues, but we haven't really gotten the time to actually put into it to get it going yet. So I have them. They're not done, but I do plan on doing many more of them.
If you become Inkscape Bob Ross, can you turn Lenny into your Peapod the squirrel?
Oh,
And
yeah.
so you just like cut to images of little Lenny on your shoulder, and you're like, oh, it's just such
I
a
could make
cute
Lenny.
little devil.
Who's Lenny?
Lenny's my caterpillar who's
Oh, right.
So you're just gonna put a pupa
Right now, I
Lenny.
figured Lenny is dead, and I just keep forgetting about him. Poor Lenny.
you just wait.
He liquefied
You
and
guys are
lives in a
hating,
bag.
but I swear to God, you're gonna wait 2 months and Lenny's gonna emerge.
But he'll only be alive for 2 weeks. You have to get all of your Inkscape tutorials done in that 2 week period.
Or just get a whole lot of B-roll.
Lenny, my mom.
So that you
my
can
mom.
cut it in and
clip
be
it
like,
in.
this is Lenny
Lenny.
now that he's a little older.
Is that how Bob Ross started?
Oh, Peapod, just
thought he was-
such a cute little devil.
You just putting down happy little nodes. Happy little nodes. We're just gonna grab the nodes and you just wiggle it
There's
around.
no mistakes.
Change the curvature of the node to a symmetrical pattern. And then
Yeah,
you can
there's no
rotate.
mistakes in Inkscape. Just butts.
It's just
Butts for
Just
days.
butts.
I mean, is there anything else you guys want to have, a little teaching series on?
I'd love to do a game maker thing, and like you were saying, I put together a video this weekend that's just currently unlisted because I want to run it through the studio gauntlet and see how everybody else feels about it before I put it out there.
Probably need to add some branding to the front of it too.
Yeah, it's right now. It's just like literally, I just recorded me making a game in Game Maker. But the idea would be I would sort of make it as a series, and then depending on what kinds of questions people asked on the first video, I would focus on hitting those things in the next video and that kind of stuff. So yeah, we'll see.
Adam,
It exists, but it's not live yet.
Would you teach anything? Is there anything you know?
Mine would be much more on, not the making a game side, which is a lot of what people think they're the most interested in.
They're wrong. People don't. They don't know
themselves.
They don't know.
All right, so what would you teach? Business stuff? Basically, so how to
Philosophy.
It
think.
would be business. It would be on how to analyze, the data analysis side, how to think about the problems you're trying to solve, and then also just programming in general, because all of what I'm doing is process improvement and automating the shit you got to do, like making a tool so that the art pipeline is just.
It is the case that everybody should learn programming, but it's very hard to do because when you're really new at it, you can't do much interesting stuff or solve very many interesting problems.
Yeah.
And it just kind of seems tedious and lame.
Mhm.
But then if you just for some reason keep going through all that,
For whatever reason.
then all of a sudden you're like, I could do anything.
But that's true for
Solve
just
any
about
problem.
anything, though. I mean,
Yep.
it's true for writing, it's true for art, it's true for everything. Tennis, literally
butt
anything.
drawing butts.
You're going to start out being terrible at it, and you're going to slowly get better if you keep at it. But it's going to be slow and take
Or
a lot of
running
work.
5Ks.
Or running 5Ks.
Kara, what would you teach?
I don't know.
You do like a UI UX thing. Your
I could do-
design
yeah.
pattern for that's really cool.
I could definitely do interface design.
Mhm.
I could potentially do little shorts on marketing
Mhm.
for other game devs.
We got all kinds of stuff.
Okay,
Yeah.
we do have knowledge to share.
We should start doing it.
Something that I was doing for a little while, I did a few Twitch streams of me just playing games and talking through design decisions in the game and just like talking about the design of the game as I played it. And people were really into that. So I kind of enjoyed just kind of breaking down other games and thinking about why design choices were made.
Mm-hmm. Do you find yourself getting extremely angry on occasion in those contexts? Because I certainly do. When I play games, I'm like, why would you do that?
I mean, sometimes I guess.
Sometimes. It's just Carol
Sometimes.
screaming at the screen.
It is pretty much just me screaming at the screen and then begging my viewers for help.
All right, next question comes from Map5597, who says, if someone wanted to job shadow one of you guys, would you be up for it? Or would that present a gigantinormous security hole for your upcoming projects? In other words, revealing your new grubby game that we're all pretty sure that you're working on.
Oh my God, that's a great idea.
Grubby Merchant 2017.
Yeah.
You just travel to other games and sell items
stuff.
to people.
That'd be awesome. Living in the void.
You just, you spend your days in the void lounging.
On our,
I was gonna say this wouldn't really be a security problem because we would just sign an NDA, which, as we all know, are completely ironclad. And
Yeah.
once you sign an NDA, you literally can't speak about things.
Well,
like
it does
a-
mean we can sue you when you do.
Yeah, which we
So there's
definitely
that.
don't want to do.
We would rather not do that.
So,
also, my witch powers do actually hide
Yeah.
their mouth anytime they start
Yeah.
thinking about.
yeah, once again, like the Matrix,
Like the
when
Matrix.
Neo's
Yeah,
mouth
exactly.
closes.
Ew, yeah, that's
Yeah.
freaky. I don't like that at all.
Then they throw a
Fleshy.
robot
Then they
scorpion
throw-
in his belly button.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
so
that was-
cool.
but it's fine because they sucked it out later. also through his belly button.
Yeah.
Also, spoilers.
If you haven't seen this 15-year-old movie.
Well, I think we have, so we don't have anything in place as far as, internship programs sort of things, or even job shadowing,
Or even
things,
space
or even space
in the
for
office
it.
to put an extra
Yeah.
person.
I think that they'll still have to wait a while. We have done, on occasion, we've done, Seth and I did probably early crash lands, like first 6 months or so crash lands. We had someone come in the office every Wednesday or so, and he just sent us an email and said, "Hey, I'm super interested in making games." Basically asking the same question, could I come hang out for a bit? And that was pretty cool. But I think after 4 weeks of seeing what actual game dev is like, he was like, okay,
I'd rather do
it's not
something.
for me. He actually just he was planning on settling in for the whole summer, and then after about 4 weeks, was like,
Yeah, so
I'm
I think
good.
if we were to even consider doing something like this, there would be a pretty hefty number of prereqs, including you having, made some games on your own.
Yeah, we don't want you
and
to-
potentially even finish some games on your own, so that you know what the whole thing is like, and so that you don't just get excited about sort of the game jam first week of coming up with game ideas, because the real work
Because that's
comes
exciting
after
for
that.
everybody. But
Yeah.
the next part is
It's the next 2 years.
It's the next 2 years.
Where you're just making, all right, today is 15 new art assets for this, right? There's a lot of work that goes into it, and it's not like they depict in commercials for game design programs and stuff where
You're holding a controller.
I'm a game designer. You're just there, the controller, just like writhing around on the couch, like slamming buttons, and somebody pops in. They're like, "Hey, I need some tips on blah." And you're like, "Do this." And you're like, "All right."
I would say that it's pretty much entirely unfeasible until we get a bigger space in general. And I've heard of really big studios offering desk space for people to work, and like you said, offering a prereq of basically saying you have to have worked on games and be serious about making games, and then you can use this desk in our space to make your own games.
Yep.
But it's not
So you
going
can
to
kind of be there by osmosis,
right.
But not have an official.
And there is something we've talked about where if we do manage to expand our space or find a new space that's bigger, then we could potentially even treat it almost like an indie dev co-working space kind of a thing. So if somebody wants to work on their own solo projects, they can just rent a desk for like $50 a month or something, just to have a space to work and be kind of in the atmosphere and stuff. And just have people to chat with about game ideas and that kind of thing, which would be a pretty cool thing to do.
Yeah. It's one of those things, of course, that there's that constant struggle, because then if there are other new people around that are trying to learn, it's really fun to teach people and be a sounding board and stuff.
But then you're not working on your own
Then you're
stuff.
not working on your own
Yeah.
stuff. And so the more people get in one room, the more structure you need to put in place to make sure people can still get work done while also benefiting from the fact that
Yeah, well, I think that's the
everybody else is
interesting thing for us is that we, if someone's in the office and they're job shadowing, it's not going to be the case that they're literally going to be able to be a fly on the wall, because
You want to engage with somebody
Yeah.
when they're sitting there.
Right.
we'd be like, I'm not going to tell you what's going on or take time to do this. And so that actually, it does take a lot of time away from work stuff, which isn't to say it's not valuable. It's just that at certain points, it becomes a viable thing for you to do as a studio when you have a certain mass of people who are able to work on games. But like in the example where it was just Seth and I and this other person, if we spent three of the hours that day sort of chatting with them or helping them with their project, there's nothing getting done on the studio front. Whereas if we have, say, 10, 12 people in the studio, and then 1 or 2 people are helping someone with job shadowing, it's not nearly as
The
big a
studio's
hit,
still doing stuff.
yeah, which is interesting. So
Yeah.
I'd be curious to do it in the future, but not for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so the next question comes from it's COD 3X, which is either Codex or Call of Duty 3X.
Or just cod.
Or codfish.
Yeah. 3 times 3.
Actually, that
three of
3X kind of looks like sort of like the tail part of a fish, sort of a little bit.
Mhm.
They somehow turn their name into a cod.
So they ask, will any of your games have multiplayer? And I'm pretty sure we didn't talk about this, but you guys had an interesting experience at Steam Dev Days about multiplayer stuff. So I wanted to bring this up.
Well,
about-
there's sort of two kinds of from a technical and actually player side standpoint. There are kind of two kinds of multiplayer. There's the kind where we as the studio get a server set up and you talk to our server and the game happens there, and then you play on your
So
end.
this is like Rocket League, World of
you
Warcraft.
just say like
Yep.
join game, and then you don't have to do anything, and it's
You
just
don't
like
do anything.
we're gonna hook you into the game.
So with this when
Into
you
the Matrix.
into
game.
the
this
matrix.
is when you as a player see the dedicated server, right? That's what that means. Okay.
Yeah, or when you see, because many modern games, that's the only option, because that is absolutely the best player experience without a doubt. And as server technology gets cheaper and cheaper, then it's just more accessible for companies to use. So that's the best option.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the other one is people run their own servers. So
Peer-to-peer.
I've got a copy of this peer-to-peer, so I got a copy of the game. You got a copy of the game. I boot up the server version on mine. You connect directly to my computer, and then we just play using my computer.
This is like when we play Terraria together.
Yeah, it's
Or
like Terraria,
Minecraft or-
Minecraft.
So you have to do the port forwarding yourself
Yeah,
and
they
all
have to do
that.
port
You
forwarding.
got to forward ports, and you got to know the IP. You got to know how to get your IP address,
Yep.
and then you got to send your IP address over to the other person so that they can type it in and connect.
And someone
to
has to configure the server properly and all that. And these typically, even for people who know what they're doing, like us, there's typically a bunch of banging your head against this fucking game that just won't quite work.
Yeah, and
you
it's
don't
also
know why.
it's because the server is programmed individually, right? So every game has their own server
Right.
code and everything, and so you can't just know how to do it for a game and then that knowledge translates to every
Right.
game. Every
Yeah,
game
it's
is going to
not
have
a
their own
default.
setup.
Yeah.
So you got to do a lot of looking up stuff and
Yep.
Googling and
And this isn't really an option for things outside of PC for the most part, because doing things like port forwarding and dealing with connecting to somebody else's machine, that's not something you really do on mobile or on a console. It's like really pretty restricted to PC. So to have a viable game that's multiplayer, that is a really good user experience for everybody on any platform, especially wanting to play cross-platform, you got to have a dedicated server. So now that means we need to set up this enormous infrastructure and solve this logistical puzzle of how do we get a server in Australia so that they don't have to wait for half a second for a signal to come from the Midwest.
And this
Of the
is
US,
why,
right?
for example, even like if you boot up, say, Diablo, you'll see US West, US East. You
Yeah.
connect to different sections, and that's just in one country. They have two separate primary server locations, so that when you're playing, if you're trying to punch a demon in the face, it doesn't take you 2/3 of a second
To find out if
between
you
the
did
time
it.
you start the
Yeah.
swing and receive information about whether you actually hit him.
Right.
Yeah.
So now there's this logistical puzzle of getting servers where they need to be.
Okay.
And if you, but of course, like things like Amazon, AWS, or Google's server capacity, all those have set it up for us so that we can just rent space in all these different countries. So they've kind of dealt with all of it. It's more expensive than doing it yourself, but to do it yourself costs an enormous amount of initial capital. So, but it's possible. Like, so
Because you also need
logistics
to own a space to put the server.
right, and you
or
need to
rent
negotiate
that space.
government things, and so logistical nightmare, right? But there are things that made it a shortcut, so we can kind of do it now. So then let's just say we get it all set up.
All right. So we have AWS. We
Yeah.
now have server
That's-
capacity
yeah,
that
We're
reaches
all
across
over the
country.
world, and we've dealt with whatever the legal issues are of doing that. And then finally, we get our awesome game up and running,
Mhm.
running great, and
Cool.
then
We're playing it.
then these fucking kids start DDoSing it.
Ugh, kids.
So
Because-
DDoS, distributed denial of service.
Yeah, this is when
it's a
you-
type of quote hack,
Yeah.
which
Really, it just means people are just pounding your website
People
with
have- yeah.
requests.
Yeah,
People just download
and
a
you can think of
program
actually
to
like
do
so to say like when Reddit picks up your website for some reason, you go to the top of the page, and then suddenly a million people from all over the world are hitting your site. That is actually a DDoS. It's just not an attack
Purposeful,
on purpose,
right.
right? But it's exactly the same thing that happens with a real DDoS attack, which is people can script usually a botnet, meaning they just have malware infected a huge number of computers or devices that can talk to the internet, and have all of those repeatedly try to talk to your server.
So this is what happened this happened last week, right? Where the
Or a
D-
couple weeks ago, yeah.
a couple weeks ago, the DDoS attack that took down the whole
Twitter,
East
Netflix,
Coast,
yeah.
the East Coast.
Yeah, because they took down the name server that mediates when you say, I want to go to twitter.com. There's a server in the middle that says, oh, I know where twitter.com is, and sends you the right place, right? So they attacked that.
Mm.
The DNS.
Yeah, the DNS service, which
And apparently they used a bunch of these internet connected devices that
Yeah.
aren't necessarily what you would
The-
consider
yeah,
a
so
computer, like your
thermostats,
thermostat.
What?
right, Philip Hue
Yeah.
lights,
yeah, anything
Yeah.
that can talk on the internet,
anything
which
that
is
can talk
most
to the
things now.
internet and can have software on it,
Yeah,
can be part
Your-
of the DDoS.
Carol,
attack.
your lights.
My
were parts of
apartment-
might
it.
have killed Netflix.
your whole apartment.
My robot house was compliant.
Yeah,
Someone else
so
used
I
it.
think the long and short of it then is it would be cool to do, but because people continuously go out of their way to ruin it,
Yeah, it's one of the many reasons we can't have nice things.
Yes,
we
what-
can't do it yet.
yeah, what
because we
exactly
don't have
did
the
you guys-
resources to deal with that.
Because what did you learn at
Well, so we
in
learned
particular
something-
about Dev Days?
So when we were at Steam Dev Days, there was a panel of people who were running multiplayer, like big multiplayer games that people play, but all actually ranging from pretty small, very small indie stuff that was still successful to really big stuff like Steam's what's their huge ass game?
Half-Life?
Team Fortress?
Team
Team
Fortress,
Fortress.
Oh, wow,
and,
okay.
and the other ones, right? What is their MOBA? What's their MOBA called?
No, Dota 2.
Dota 2. Yeah, that's the one.
Oh.
So Dota 2 and Team Fortress use up an enormous amount of server resources, still today. And that has actually prompted Valve as a company to extend a huge amount of reach into all these other countries of setting up server resources. But basically what they said is they're under constant DDoS attack, like literally
So
constant.
in other words, if we want to have a
Lord.
multiplayer game, we actually not just have to
but
build
even
the
the
game.
little guy,
You actually
even the guy who just set up a game that's probably on par with the success of Crashlands, maybe a bit more because it's a multiplayer game. But it's kind of on that level of success. A small, tiny indie studio, right? Same deal. He said about half of the time that they're live, which is of course hopefully all the time, they're under DDoS attack.
Half of the time.
Yeah.
So if you do this, you actually need at least a person on your team whose job is to try to keep people from destroying the game.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Welcome to humanity, folks.
Yeah.
And so if you are one of those, and actually Seth was telling a story a while ago where he talked to some cashier at like a Micro Center or something.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
having a little chat, and the guy made some comment about how when he plays Call of Duty or some fucking game,
Counter-Strike.
one of his approach is actually to conscript a botnet at
If
one of the
if somebody's better than him,
If
he
somebody's
will,
better than
he
him.
will DDoS the server he's playing on.
yeah,
my
because
God.
it's that easy to conscript a botnet as just an end user now because they're really cheap and you can just basically hire them out for a small period of time. And so now these fucking people just like, and that's why I said kids, because he's probably 20 something, but
Yeah.
in his mind he's a child. Right? so these fucking kids are just basically be like, oh, this is hilarious. I can just go make somebody's computer not work, right? And they're providing a value in this service that allows an enormous number of people to continue developing this technology of making it really easy and really cheap to knock entire.
Well, of course, if you
servers
make
down.
say like a 5v5 game,
Yeah.
if 10% of your user base does this, then that's on average a person each game, right?
Yeah.
So it's just such a huge problem that, and actually for Crashlands, it's single player only. And when around the time of launch for the first month or so, at least half of our customer support requests were people who had hacked their own game and broken something, and then came to us to fix it, right?
Yeah.
And so this
We
even
remember that-
happens with single player games.
Well, you remember we got one from someone who was like, oh, I can't, like this item's not working or something like that. And so we pulled down their save through Butterscotch ID, and they had what 9,999 of every single
everything.
consumable of everything, actually.
Yeah.
Not even just consumables, just
oh,
everything.
God.
And we were like, we can't.
And there was
I'm not
another
helping
person.
you. Like, you know,
My favorite one though was the one who hacked their account. And of course, a lot of what you're doing when you're hacking a game is just trying random stuff until you get something to work. And had managed to set his clock to negative time, right?
oh yeah.
And the game wasn't designed with this like as a possibility. So all
because
the kinds of
the game code starts 0 time and
then
it only
adds.
goes up.
So
Right?
so it's not even handling the case where like time is negative. But miraculously it didn't just crash. Instead, nothing could spawn. So there were no creatures, there were no resources.
Because things tend to spawn on a time based thing.
Yeah.
And so like if you destroyed something or whatever, then after 6 hours have gone by, then it can spawn. Well, if the current time is 200 years prior to the last time you killed the creature, then it never comes back. Right?
Wow.
So in that case, though, you're hacking the game, you're ruining your own game experience,
Which is
That's
fine.
Whatever.
But then if you
walked
reach
into that
out
one.
and waste the developers' resources, their time, right? And
Then
ask them
that
to
sucks.
fix the thing that you did, now that's making it so that everybody else who wants to play games made by the developer are now going to get games slower.
Well,
and
so-
they're going to get updates slower because you're burning their
time.
really limited time.
Well, the crazy thing to me about this is because we were fully planning on making a multiplayer game for one of our next games, like one of our next titles.
Yeah, that was
As in the next one actually was the first plan was actually literally the next game, and then after
started
we thought
coding it
about
up to it.
a bit-
Actually, we were have a prototype where we're playing it in the office, and we
Yeah.
can all run around in the same little world and stuff.
And then
Yeah.
after this realization, where it was going to be, we actually don't have the resources for this because of the fact that we have to have another person at least whose job is literally just to stop
need a
people
full-time
from destroying everything.
security.
Really technically proficient security web team,
Right.
basically, which would start with one person, but there would be a full-time job.
Yeah, and so we realized that unfortunately, we can't. It's not in the cards for us to build a multiplayer game right now, as much as everyone keeps asking for it, like an actual, dedicated server sort of
And
thing.
if you're a listener to this and you know anyone, including yourself, who does any of this bullshit and just
you go and
thinks,
say
"Oh,
to
this is
them,
just funny."
"Hey, buddy, stop doing that.
Yeah.
That's bad."
Yeah, buddy.
And
Hey,
like,
buddy.
and it's like, I mean, if you're doing it and you can't know because it's hard to know the other side of the thing, right? Because it sounds like it's just kind of fun and to
No one's
kinda
getting
fuck with
hurt.
people a
I'm
little bit,
just destroying the
Uh,
East Coast server.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, because of this stuff, we're not going to make multiplayer games.
Yeah.
It's like we have the capacity to make the multiplayer games,
yeah.
but
Yeah.
because these people are doing this,
We don't have the
constantly-
capacity to defend them.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
have. Yeah,
Which is weird.
Yeah,
but
you
that's
have to
the way
do
it
both.
is.
So yeah, so if you hear people doing this, just let them know that there are real consequences to this kind of stuff, and maybe knock it off.
Maybe stop doing that.
You're the reason why Crashlands isn't multiplayer.
Yeah.
You did this.
You brought this on yourself.
Actually, no, that just would have been a huge pain. But
Yeah,
that's a
that's
different.
true.
yeah,
We
Crashlands
can
is
tell
a
them
different
that.
story.
Yeah,
can
but
tell
we can
them
make we can blame other people. It's easier that way.
All right, next question comes from Beast, who asks, most/all of your games have been mostly action focused thus far. Have you ever thought about making a puzzle game with some kind of new and fun mechanic? You seem like smart chaps. It might be an interesting challenge for you.
Chaps,
Mm.
The
like the pants without butts.
with the butt.
Those are only specifically assless,
Assless chaps. Yeah, you can
Oh,
have
right.
assed chaps.
Can you have
As-
ass chaps?
I think you can have assed chaps.
What about
I
just
thought it was
what about
just
just ass chaps? Like that only cover your
butt
ass.
flap.
Yeah.
The butt flap.
The butt flap.
What's the butt
I
flap?
think assless chaps is redundant. I'm pretty sure I had this argument like a couple
Yeah,
years
yeah,
ago.
I'm pretty sure
it's
too.
redundant because chaps are just
That's fair.
assless.
Assless chaps are just chaps that you're not wearing over jeans.
Yes,
Right?
that's what it
That's just straight
is. That's
up
the one.
straight up chaps.
So it's really a chap who's being assless.
Yeah, by wearing chaps
chaps
without pants.
Okay.
So how do you go from a leathery pant material to calling someone a chap as a term?
This is a great
That's
question.
like a genial term.
It's
you know?
one of
Think
those.
chap. It's a fucking weird word. I don't like it.
Yeah, what is the
Chap.
etymology?
I don't know.
It's just one of those words that's just kind of slid its way in there.
Anyways,
Nobody
puzzle
wants to know.
games.
Oh
Puzzle
right,
games.
team.
What were we talking about?
We've talked
Anybody
about
made
NCP.
one? Anybody got thoughts on that?
I made, or Seth and I made
Gerblins.
Gerblins.
And Sam did the sounds.
Sam did that. He almost vomited while doing the
I
sounds.
did.
What, really?
Yeah, I was getting really into it. And
The sounds are, there's really gruff, like gross kind of.
there's sort of like
Guttural
throaty,
throat
gurgly
sounds.
things, and I did one, and I was like, like almost, yeah.
Wow.
that's
So we
gross.
did that one.
forgot about that.
It was kind of like a combo of Tetris and Minesweeper.
Yeah.
I think you had a grid of things, and you had to get them out of there. But unlike Minesweeper, where when you hit a mine, the game is over. And this one, if you hit a bad space, then it would fly away, and then a new row would fall down from the top.
Is Gerblin still available to download?
We just
Nope.
took it off everything.
It's
Our
down
most
now this
hardcore Butterscotch fans still have it on their phones.
Yeah.
But
If you have it,
nobody
it's
else
a,
does.
it's a digital collector's item at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we've talked about the possibility of sort of rebuilding it quickly and put. I mean, it was a weekend game.
Mhm.
It didn't take very long to make, but it was
Yeah.
it was a medium
fun.
game.
We kind of addressed this a bit before. The main problem with a puzzle game is that a really good puzzle has to be designed by a person, right? Designing really good puzzles is hard as fuck.
Mhm.
And solving puzzles can take a completely indeterminate amount of time for your end user. So some people might just plow through it. And so you need a lot of content. Some people might find the initial one already basically impossible.
This is what I think
So
about a
there's
game
no
like
such thing as a difficulty curve with a
Yeah.
puzzle game. It's just people can do it or they can't. That's
it's
kind of
either
the
you
end
can
story.
either you can figure out the solution or you're stuck.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And then because I remember Monument Valley.
Yeah.
Great game. Got slammed by some people for its shortness.
Yeah.
It was so good.
It's a great game.
And there's a
you could tell-
reason it was short.
Yeah, and they took a
because it's hard
fuckload of
as
time to
fuck.
make this.
Yeah.
Not because they were just sitting around being lazy, but because making a puzzle is unbelievably difficult.
Especially making an MC Escher puzzle.
yeah.
Yeah.
God.
And so
Good Lord.
so what we found is, by making action games, the interaction points are very straightforward, but you can iterate them in all kinds of interesting ways by having, like, when you hit something or when you get hit or when you like run on top of a thing or jump or whatever. You can have things bounce and explode and like have different, like, and when you add RPG elements, you can have different numbers popping up and you can have the character scaling up. Like, there's all kinds of very straightforward systems that you can layer on top of each other to get some really satisfying game experiences. And those experiences weirdly last a lot longer than a puzzle experience. And there's also a level of mastery, because with a puzzle, once you solve it, it's done. Right. And you if you go back and do it again,
You already know the
the
answer.
fun of the puzzle is figuring out the solution, and the fun has been depleted. And
Unless you then make a procedural puzzle game, which is always going to be
like
worse.
Bejeweled
or Gerblins,
or Gerblins.
right? Or you can take like something like Candy Crush, which is a combo of the two, right? So it's a design level within a randomized pattern of things that come down. At least I think that's how it works. But the puzzle games are just better when they're designed. So if you want to provide enough content for people that they can keep on playing the game and play it a lot, then it's going to necessarily be worse.
I've always wondered why we call games like Bejeweled, a puzzle game.
Is that what it's referred to?
I think
That's
so.
in app stores and stuff. They're always categorized as puzzle
Yeah, it's
games,
interesting,
but
'cause-
they don't have a solution, right? It's more of it's like a logic game almost
Yeah.
or something.
Kind of like you must build a boat, right? Right. You need like match 3
Yeah.
or anything like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's not a puzzle.
Because at any given point, there's a number of potential solutions, right? And you just kind of do stuff.
I think it's just there isn't a genre that's been developed for those kind of more simple, kind of broken down game ideas, right?
Right,
It's-
like, yeah, I think the idea of a logic game is actually probably better, right? 'Cause
Yeah.
even Tetris.
I think people
throw in
just
that
use
category.
those synonymously
Yeah, I think you're right.
for the
Yeah.
genre. Yeah.
It's puzzling.
But yeah, so I mean,
therefore.
we're
It's a puzzle
probably
game.
we're probably gonna continue to lean on action and RPG kinds of stuff. Also, because we really love the idea of trying to tell stories through our games and having characters and doing all kinds of stuff, and having games that are more focused on you kind of like being present in the world as an actor and talking to people and going out in the world and doing stuff. It just lends itself a lot better to things that are more actiony and more, RPG like and stuff like that. So
I really dig finding puzzles within those kinds of worlds. though.
yes,
Mhm.
Like, I mean, Zelda type puzzles where it's you're totally immersed in this action space. You're
Push some blocks.
yeah. Then suddenly you have to put the sword down and start
Right.
thinking about your environment and start thinking about more of the logic side of things. And I
Yeah.
think that
It's a
that
nice
adds a layer of
blend.
depth. Yeah, it adds a
Yeah.
layer of depth, and it gives your brain an opportunity to do something different
Mhm.
amidst gameplay. I used to design puzzle games a little bit, mostly as prototypes and stuff. I actually showed you the one that I did a long time ago where it was just kind of blocks and puzzles, and it was just level after level of increasing difficulty, obviously, because that's how you make video games. But it was so hard to keep coming up
It
with
is
interesting
really hard.
puzzles.
Yeah.
So I would echo your thought there, just having done it for so many different levels and feeling like it was just a never ending challenge.
And it's also hard because as the designer of the puzzle, you know how
You know
everything
too.
works. You know the solution, right? And it's
Yeah,
always
you can't even have a concept of whether it's difficult or not.
yeah, because you can't even though you can try to sort of document what the player should know at any given point and try to design the puzzles around that. Once you know a thing, you can't unknow it. And it's very hard to design a puzzle while always keeping in mind the things you're not supposed to know
Right.
but do the
Right,
whole
yeah.
time.
The
It's
one
weird.
the one thing I've learned that is incredibly important as a puzzle designer is that always design it about 10 times easier than you expect,
Mhm.
and then design it about 10 times easier than that.
Right.
And that's your tutorial.
Did anybody play The Witness? I know they had.
I
some,
started
you,
to.
I think you made some comments about that
Yeah.
difficulty
There's
curve.
like
in that game.
600 puzzles in that game.
It's tough. That's actually another one of the games that gave me motion
right.
sickness.
Yeah.
So I couldn't
It
keep
happened to
playing
a lot of
it.
people, I think.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But it was really interesting puzzles. It was just really, really hard, and it kind of felt pointless to keep trying. It's just this is going to last for the rest of my life if I keep trying to solve every single one.
Yeah. I think I really like the integrated puzzle idea, sort of what you're talking about with Zelda and stuff. And my favorite personal example of that is Alien Swarm, where you're playing with 4 people. It's a
Really
co-op.
time sensitive.
Yeah, having a time rush component to it where you have one person who plays as a tech and they can essentially hack into doors. And to do the hack, they have to do this logic game where it's essentially the pipe connectors, but just a single row of these symbols, and you have to rotate them to make the lines sort of match up until they get to the end. And while this is happening, of course, your teammates are behind you blasting off aliens that are just coming in. And the longer it takes you, the more these things
yeah.
are coming.
Yeah.
And then as soon as you open the door, everybody can sprint in and turn around. You can steal it up with like a hand welder. And it's just this most satisfying. Like, that was my favorite role to play in that game because it was so fun to like get in there and everyone's like, "Oh, hurry
Yeah,
up, hurry
because
up."
it's
You're
interesting
flipping
because
these
there's
things.
not a hard time where the puzzle isn't like you have to do this in 5 seconds.
Right.
It's just like you just know you got to do it fast.
Yeah.
'Cause
Yeah.
the faster you go, the better it is for your team. You know.
And I think that integrated form of that, I think you're absolutely right. Where it adds, like, sure, if that game was just about shooting aliens, it'd be neat,
And if it was
team-based
just
shooter.
pipe puzzles, it would suck.
Yeah, but when you put both of them together, and especially in that using it in that way, where there's no time pressure from the puzzle itself, but just from the world, then now you got some really
Even EVE Online has an entire section of the game that's basically they call it exploration, but it's you have to go out into these like very remote areas of space and use these scanners to find these data and relic sites, like these ancient space things floating around, and you have to outfit your ship with equipment that allows you to like access these canisters, and it's a little hacking like puzzle mini game, and it's incredibly lucrative actually because you have to like solve the puzzle, and then you also need to get the stuff out of it and then get the stuff back somewhere to sell it without getting blown up or whatever. So it's kind of like a puzzle mixed in with the rest of the economy of the game and stuff like that.
That's so cool. I just love the way that it forces your brain to switch gears mid-game.
Yeah.
It's a nice thing for people to opt into too, right? Like you say, if you want to break from killing stuff, which is the usual thing in action games, and it's nice to be able to either slow down and do some hacking or, something else, but have it be integrated into the game context. Our next question comes from Darth Binary. He says, the Skyrim remaster is out now with the main 2 editions being better graphics and mods. If a Crashlands remaster came out, what would be the main 2 additions to it? I figure...
well, not multiplayer.
Not multiplayer.
No. Probably it would be, not direct multiplayer, probably just be an MMO. That'd be the first thing. And then that's it. Yeah.
I think it sounds like Sam would probably want to redo a lot of the art.
A bit of it.
Or a bit of it.
Well, we would have the Shenanimator in full swing at that time. Basically everything in the world would be all wiggly and bouncy and squibbly.
At that point, we may as well just make the second one though. At that point.
Well, I mean, that's exactly the thing, is that just in general, when it comes to remastering, it's that finding that line between, well, might as well just make version 2 now, right? And I think for Crashlands, we're definitely, because at least I feel like we got kind of really everything we wanted out of Crashlands. And so a remastered one, there's nothing that I in particular want to remaster at all.
There are things I want to expand on.
Yeah,
but
or just make
a sequel sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. It's a sequel kind of thing, which I think is maybe a better place to end up in.
I mean, how do you make that decision between remastering a thing and sequeling a thing?
I think if you are Bethesda and you spent $200 million making a game,
that's fair,
that then made like $600 million.
Like, do you spend $200 million more? Or
do you... Well, no, because they're also making a new one anyway. So if they can put a tiny dev team on remastering this thing that people still love anyway, and it's being kept alive by the mod community, and so you put out an olive branch after they, of course, spat on them all a little while ago,
right?
And say, sorry about all that.
Sorry about that spit.
Sorry about that. We're gonna make it even better, and also just make you have a better game experience that's updated because you love this game anyway, but it's starting to feel old because the graphics aren't as good and so on. That's a really, really cheap way to kind of extend the life of a successful product.
Right. Once you're operating at scale.
At scale.
Which we are not anywhere near.
And, absolutely. So, and this is something we talked about in the past too, is that it's really, really hard, maybe even impossible, to convert an okay or poorly selling game into a successful one just by adding new stuff, because really only the users who already know about your game will see that you have new stuff. But if you have a game that still is successful and part of your mechanism is to keep people chronically engaged by adding stuff that just gives them stuff to do forever, right? Then you can use that as a way to extend the life of a game.
Yep. Yeah, it's not going to move new players into the mix.
No.
You don't see an update for a game and be like, "Oh, cool. They added a new gun or whatever. I'm going to buy the game now." Because like you don't know, there's no context for that.
Right. Yeah, but I mean a hardcore remastery though of something like a really popular Bethesda game that's years old is the kind of thing that if there's enough news about it could drive a PC player, because PC players stereotypically love the fuck out of graphics, right? And so if they've been on the fence about a game that everybody has like kind of loved, but now it's an old game because the graphics aren't as good, right? And then gets a graphics overhaul, then maybe that's enough to put you over the edge and actually get you to go try.
Yeah, like I'm not going to buy this NVIDIA GTX 1400 and not just throttle it up to the max on the best looking games in the market. Yeah. Can't be buying old games.
But it seems like, I don't know, to me that seems like a risky venture if that was the move. But if the move is just to say, we want to just extend the life of this product for the people who are playing it and telling their friends to continue playing it, then I think
it's also, in Bethesda's case, this acts as a really very cheap way for them to have another launch, right? Because we always talk about like the biggest power of most games is in the launch window. So if they can take, like you said, say it costs $10 million to do a remastered thing, but they get to do another launch of the same game a few years later, it's pretty saturated as far as,
Well, everybody kind of wins there, right? Because for the players, it's like, fuck yeah, this game that I love, now there's an even better version of it out there, right? And the studio wins and everybody wins.
Yeah.
I would say on a smaller scale, Double Fine just did this both with Grim Fandango and Day of the Tentacle. And I think it went over really well because those were both at least a decade old, if not older than that. And I never played those games when I was a kid. And so it was a really great opportunity for somebody like me who'd seen how popular they were to finally play it on my modern system. And so I think that's another opportunity is, 10 years down the road, if Crashlands still has a cult following and it's not out, for the platforms that are popular at the time.
Right.
That's a really great opportunity.
It's the nostalgia pull.
Yeah, sort of bring it back and get people excited about it who never had an opportunity to play.
Yeah.
Well, this line of Bethesda leads to another question from Froyo.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So unfortunately have to be our last question. So I hope it's really good.
It's pretty interesting. So
Okay.
this is related to some games news stuff.
Okay.
So Froyo asks, with the recent announcement of Bethesda's new review policy, which is that review copies are not given out to press until the day before a launch. The day before.
Wait, whose policy is
Bethesda.
Bethesda's. Okay.
Who makes
I
400-hour
saw some
games.
people complaining, but I didn't actually know the details.
So in other words, usually, just so everybody is put into context here, for developers, usually you give your reviewers keys to your game at least 2 weeks before launch so that they can have plenty of time to play it, write up their thoughts.
And depending on the game and the strategy, sometimes it's even months ahead of time, or there's.
And the interesting thing with this announcement was that this is not YouTubers included. So in other words, they will give out keys to YouTubers and to other quote unquote influencer press, so streamers and such, who tend to be a little bit more bound to saying good things or making the game look like it's a lot of fun. But they won't give them to actual journal press who tend to be critique oriented. So that's the context here. So Froyo asks, what are your thoughts about this and also review embargoes generally speaking?
So
Interesting.
the embargoes thing is an easy one. Which is we did this for Crashlands. We did review embargoes. The reason being we put the game out 2 weeks before it came out, and the reason being is a 40 to 80 hour game depending on your play style. So the reviewers needed a lot of time to actually sit down with it and formulate their opinions about it so that they could publish the review. So that's good for us because we want people playing the game to actually have a full picture of what it is. And it's also good for the reviewers because if we just hand out the game and we're just like, go crazy, kids, then they now have to race each other to try to be the first one to break the review for the new game, right? Because that's going to be the one that
Yeah, because
people
they're
find when they
competing.
search.
Exactly, they're competing for search engine.
Yeah, that's actually why. So from the media side of things, the reason that embargoes are important is to think about all the players in the game. For us,
It's about leveling the playing field.
yeah. So for us, the embargo is important because it puts all of the press surrounding the game onto launch day, which is usually when you embargo until an
You
embargo.
don't want people to see your game when they can't buy it.
Exactly. And that's the only reason why. So, but from a press standpoint, from a media standpoint, the reason embargoes are nice is because if they know no reviews are allowed to be published until, in our case, January 21st for Crashlands, there's not going to be a problem of one person essentially getting a couple thousand view lead through like Google search, and then just being stuck at the top.
Just being at the top, yeah.
And this is why when we had we had a bit of a fiasco with a YouTuber breaking our embargo, we actually were not the ones who brought a hammer down on him. The rest of the YouTuber community did because his video went up, got I think 25,000 views in a day.
Well, some people were mad at us because they thought that
we gave him
special
exclusive access.
And so once we cleared that up, then everybody turned their vitriol onto him because you got to understand that these are communities of people, right? And it's not just like one guy who's running his YouTube channel in isolation from all the other YouTubers. They're all buddies, and they all essentially actually work together in a lot of ways to make sure that the boat keeps floating for everyone.
Yeah, there needs to be a sense of fairness.
And so having one person's thing come out early and then get, say, a huge chunk of views means that anytime a search is done, now that person's is going to be at the top.
Yeah,
which means that everybody else's stuff is going to drown to the bottom.
Right.
But this is the media
This
side.
question, though, is interesting because it's not even about that part. Because they're not even giving keys out until the day before.
To press.
Isn't that to press? Yeah. But I mean,
They give us to YouTube.
But there's a difference, though, because there's an embargo, but there's also giving the key out, right? So the embargo says, we'll give you the key at some point ahead of launch.
So you can still play it and
so
actually
you have time to review
experience the game.
experience it, write up your thing. And then the embargo says, this is when you get to release that.
Correct.
Right. So by not giving the key out until one day ahead of time, you're just saying, I'm only giving you 24 hours to form and articulate your opinion in whatever format that is, so that you can post it when the embargo ends.
And especially with Bethesda, of all companies
Yeah.
to do this, because
my
their
guess.
games tend to be
Long.
300
Very-
hours plus.
Yeah. My guess this is a consequence of why we can't have nice things, which is that Bethesda is a big game company that people are really excited about their products, like really excited about it, and inevitably things leak constantly, right? Constantly. And so every time they're leading up to a big release, somebody fucks something up and ruins it. Right. And this includes, unfortunately, press. Just when you have something that people are excited enough about and enough people getting keys, because there's a lot of people in the press, there's just a good chance that someone's going to go
One
slip.
or two of them is going to
Well,
get out
people
there.
write about games because they love games, and so a lot of the press are probably fans of the game. And
Yep. And so it's easy for people to screw up unintentionally. And it's also easy for people to, because the incentives are now really wonky, right? Because the incentive for you as an author is to be the first one to talk about some cool thing, right?
Right.
And so there's just a lot of pressure.
And also just kind of think about kind of how easy it would be if, like, let's say you received a key and you're like, yeah, I'm not going to write about it. It's very easy to be anonymous on the internet and put anything anywhere, right? And so it's purely based on the honor system.
Yeah.
Right. Like you hand a key to somebody, you say, hey, don't talk about this. And they say, okay, I won't. And you just have to trust that they won't, because they totally could.
Yeah.
If they wanted
They
to.
absolutely could. And
putting a lot of faith in people who you don't know.
yeah. So who knows why they're doing it, but I have a suspicion that has.
Well, I mean, the general
something to do
player
with it.
response has been, and the press response in particular, written press, has been that they're essentially trying to suppress critique until people have already bought the game.
But why do people have the right to get the game early to critique it before it launches? Like, that's an absurd.
You mean the press?
Yeah.
I mean, it's,
That's an absurd
but
stance.
the idea is one of anti-consumerism is essentially what's being volleyed at them, because they're not allowing people to.
Whether or not
players
that
are
was the
saying,
actual
players are
intent.
saying
whether or
we
not they-
deserve to get an unbiased, clear picture of the
Correct.
thing we're buying.
But which is hilarious because the games press is nothing like that. It's like any critique based system. It's arbitrary. It just depends on the opinions and whims of the person writing it in the thing they represent. So the idea that as a consumer you will be more informed by being able to read critiques of a game a few days before
by
it
like
comes
10
out.
or 20 different
Right.
high profile people.
Yeah, that you'll now be more informed and can make a better opinion about buying the thing.
I think, you got to think too about the broader context, which is if there's somebody who has reviewed a bunch of games in the past and you've tended to agree, right? Then you think this person tends to have the same tastes as me,
Then here's the other thing is, if you're the kind of person for whom reviews are really important and those form your decisions, then
You'll wait for it.
You'll wait for
Yeah.
it.
You can just
a
wait.
day,
Yeah.
a day, right?
Because
the fact
it's
is,
not
like,
gonna unnecessarily crush anything.
So you think
No,
basically their reasoning would be, this is hugely problematic from a dev and a press and just a launch standpoint because of the various slip-ups that can happen that have even happened to us.
that happened to us.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that guy was not being malicious at all.
not at all.
He just made a mistake.
He just scheduled it and didn't look at the embargo date and then left.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
he
so it
went
just
on
popped up.
vacation.
Yeah.
No, I mean that's exactly it. Is we're gonna we will definitely handle our next launch differently than we did the last one because of that.
Yeah.
And we also are going to give out keys to fewer people because of that same risk, right? Because we've now learned also, and one of our big, I guess, theories is that the importance of telling people about your game when they can take an action, typically buy it, right? So on the one hand, you want to let people know a game is coming so they can get excited about it, and so that they kind of, when it appears, they're not just surprised and don't know what the hell it is. But on the other hand, if you waste all of, or not waste, but spend all of that energy telling people about it when they can't do anything about it, then you're just spinning. Because our embargo, I think, was 2 days before launch, right? Or ended 2 days before launch.
Yes, something like that.
And so all of a sudden, it was really cool to watch. All of a sudden, people were streaming and talking about the game and putting up articles and stuff 2 days before the thing came out, and so excitement was building. But that means that just like anything on the internet, almost every piece of content that appears and goes live on the internet, all of its views are within the first hour, right?
Or day at least.
Or day, and then after that, it just plummets. And so what that means is that we had 2 days of all of these people looking at this thing and then definitely not taking action on it because they forgot about it 2 days later, because now those sites had a different set of games.
Unless they happened to visit any of the storefronts where we were featured. Right?
Yeah.
So then it's kind of a reminder, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, so you have to kind of do it in combination.
But it
with
would be
something.
better if the embargo date was the launch date, probably, because then everybody gets to start talking about the game at the same time. People can go buy it when they see it,
But
etc.
your greater point with the Bethesda review thing is that it's not anti-consumerist
No.
to say you guys can just wait a day for a review to
It
come out
absolutely
so that
is
we can
not.
protect
You're still
our investment.
going to ultimately have all the information you need.
Because no one,
Right.
there's
If it's
no
important
actual
to you,
deadline
just-
in terms of purchase.
Yeah, because for me, if Bethesda launches a game, that's a game worth buying. because I trust Bethesda to make a good product, right? They've done that historically. I don't need somebody to tell me that it's a good or a bad product. I can decide for myself. If it's a brand new thing that I've never seen before, then I'm going to wait until I see a review about
it's interesting, like
right?
a
But I
new
don't need
game
to do it
company-
then I'm not going to be excited about it at launch anyway.
Right. I mean, a new game
you know-
company would not be able to pull this as
No.
far as having this be a successful method for the, like,
Yeah,
we wouldn't be
if
able to
you're
say,
just like, sorry,
nah.
press, you can wait.
They'd be like, I didn't even read your emails. I don't know what you're doing.
Like why compare Bethesda to a new game company?
Yeah.
Like they have so much
Right.
more experience
They can do
with
whatever they
press.
want.
They understand exactly how it works and they understand where the failings are, like Adam was saying.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like it's really easy. And I think that the culture right now, especially in the games, in the gamer culture, is to just assume ill will.
Yeah.
And every step of the way and just assume that they're out to get me. And it's like, that's not necessarily the case. There are so many other factors involved and so many other decision-making processes that it's like, there could be any of a number of reasons why they've decided to do this. And I can almost guarantee that to screw over their fans was not one of them.
They're like, you know what? Yeah, screw these people who are actually like sustaining our studio.
Yeah, I mean,
and enjoying the stuff we make.
Yeah, if you're a big studio that's making successful products, the moment because the investment into one of their games is fucking enormous. And if they make a bad game that year, if
that is a violation of trust.
it's a violation of trust, and now people will not buy the next game. I mean, still, of course, it's going to take a while for that to decay in a really appreciable way, right? But it is going to make an enormous hit on the next game because people won't trust the company anymore. They don't need reviewers to tell them this game is bad now. They're going to go buy it and then they won't go buy the next game. So it's not, it has never been, it's a terrible long-term strategy. And so for a company that works on a short-term strategy basis, like a lot of publicly traded companies, there could be some true sort of incentive to do that, but it still is a bad long-term strategy. So it's one of those things where, although it's stupid and normally I hate saying like the market will kind of solve itself, I think this is absolutely one of those cases where people won't buy stuff from sources they don't trust. And so if a company breaks consumer trust, it's already sufficient. You don't need to have somebody else be like, hey, remember that they broke your trust.
Right.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, if you really like a company, you're not gonna believe the reviews anyway. You're just gonna say, because they're arbitrary. So
like, I've enjoyed the last 10 games of theirs that I played.
Yeah.
And they're like, this rando doesn't like it. Well, no, I'll probably check it out.
Even if
anyway.
you tend to agree with them on other stuff, you'll still give the game the benefit of the doubt and go try it out.
True.
So
Interesting.
And this also kind of makes me think, as just one final thought, about Fallout Shelter.
yeah,
Yeah.
but they just
Which
sprung on
they
the world.
literally, nobody even knew it existed. And I think there was a big reason for that, which was I think Bethesda probably correctly anticipated that if they had announced, hey, everybody,
making a mobile game.
the next Fallout game is going to be a sort of Farmville town management style mobile game.
Yeah,
Everybody
people
would have been
would've
like
been outraged.
outraged. Yeah. But because
yeah.
they released the game the day they announced Fallout 4.
Yeah.
Right. So it was more like, hey, while you're waiting for Fallout
Here's
4,
a
we
little
got
gift.
this.
Yeah.
But it literally was the case that the next Fallout game between 3 and 4 was a mobile game.
Yeah.
Right. And if
they
they
just
hyped it up,
nailed it. They framed it so well.
yeah.
Yeah.
If they were just like, hey guys, we just made this for you. Enjoy. And that's it. And everybody just loved it. Right. And so I think framing things is really important. And I think
Bethesda's good at it.
at the moment, I have no reason to distrust them.
Bethesda.
And I think that they just make good stuff and want people to enjoy it. And they're going to try to find the best way to make that happen.
Yeah, I would, but I would definitely love to know the rationale for it.
Yeah, I'm curious. Like, we can only speculate.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's it for this week's podcast. So again, you can ask questions at podcast.bscotch.net. Follow us on the internet's various Twitters and things at bscotch.net.
Subscribe to the podcast on wherever the hell you listen to the podcast.
SoundCloud.
Tell all your
Places.
friends, family, and dogs.
And maybe leave some reviews.
Dogs love podcasts.
They do. They sure do.
Sure do. All right.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.